Now that we understand the distinction between methods and functions, let's move on to a really important operation, converting methods to functions. This is a conversion that Scala programmers perform all the time. In fact, it is so ubiquitous that very often the terms method and function are used interchangeably. However, there are some subtleties involved in this conversion, and that's what this demo will focus on. Let's start by declaring a couple of values which we'll need in the example up ahead. Pi and the value r. R stands for radius once again. Let's create a method called getCircleArea. This method takes in a double, that's the radius, and it returns its area, that is pi into r square. So far so good. We've already seen how methods are defined using the def keyword. Now that that's done, let's create a value and let's try and assign this method to the value. I am first going to try and do this in the most obvious way. I declare a value called calcCircleArea and I attempt to merely assign the method to that value. But in fact, this will not work. And we can see that for ourselves. If we hit enter after typing this out, the Scala interpreter throws an error. We have confused Scala because it's not quite sure what we had in mind. Maybe we intended to invoke the method and store the return value, which is a double, in the value calcCircleArea. That would imply that calcCircleArea should be a double. On the other hand, maybe we intended to explicitly convert the method into a function, in which case calcCircleArea would be a function object. We've got to specify the type of the function, we've got to specify the type of the value on the left hand side, and there are two ways of doing so. One of these two ways is to make use of a placeholder, that's the underscore character over there. But this use of the underscore is a bit of a shortcut, so let's do it the long explicit way, because that way we'll really understand what's going on. What we basically have to do is to specify the type of the function object on the left, and we want to do so such that that type matches the type of the method on the right. If we specify that type and then go ahead and re-perform the same assignment, Scala will accept it. And that's exactly what's just happened on screen now. We have specified that the type of the value calcCircleArea is double in and double out. And Scala accepts it and it creates a function object of type function1. The magic, the bit that made this assignment work, was our correctly specifying the type of the left hand side to be a double in and a double out. That's what's highlighted on screen now. And now that we have a function object, we can test it out by invoking it with the value of radius. We call this function object calcCircleArea with the value r, which was 10, and we get back a double 314. So we've satisfied ourselves that our function object really is a function. It can be invoked like a function with a parameter. Let's now turn our attention back to the first method which we briefly alluded to. This is the simpler way because it relies entirely on the type of the method on the right. When we use that underscore character, we do not need to specify the type of the value of the function object on the left. All that we need to do is to say to Scala, please take whatever type the method on the right has and please create a function object which has that same type. Scala's type inference does the rest. It figures out that the type of the method on the right is a double in, double out. It creates a function1 object. This is a function object and this is a function1 because it has one input parameter. A double goes in and a double is returned. We invoke it using the value r, and once again we get the correct answer, that's 314. So our second attempt at assigning a method to a function has also been successful. You should be aware that there are situations where this use of the underscore does not work. And here is such an example coming up on screen now. Basically, what you see on screen now is a method called getAreaClosure, which returns a function object called getArea. GetArea is a function object, and what you see on screen is an example of a method returning a function. In fact, this also demonstrates our first closure, but let's not worry about that right now. What we want to do is to invoke the method and store the returned function object in another function object which we can use outside the original method. It turns out that the only way of doing so is the long way. If we explicitly specify the type of the function object on the left and we specify this type to be a double in and double out, then the method getAreaClosure will be invoked and its return value, that's the function getArea, will be assigned exactly as we would like. On the other hand, if we try to use the placeholder underscore, the wrong thing will happen. Scala will simply convert the method getAreaClosure into a function and store this in our function object on the left. This is not what we had in mind. Let's go ahead and try the long way first. Explicitly specify the type of the function object on the left, and we correctly specify that this type is double in and double out. And the result is a function 1. This is a function object called area calculator, a function 1. We can go ahead and invoke this function object. We pass in a double, and as expected, we get a double back. We invoke it with the value of r equals 10, and we get the correct answer of 314. Let's now go ahead and try the same operation, but this time we will not explicitly specify the type of the function object. But straight away we can see that something is wrong. What has happened here is that Scala has taken that method and converted it to a function and assigned that function to our function object. We have a function object containing the method getAreaClosure. This is not what we had in mind, and that's why we are unable to invoke this function object, because it's referring to the original method rather than to the return value of the method. And so when we attempt to invoke our function, an error results. Don't sweat the details of the closures or the return value being a function in this example, but do remember from this example that converting methods to functions is tricky. There are times when you do not want it to happen, and Scala implicitly does so.